So I recently got a drum set in my studio. It was a secondhand drum set that my sister didn't want, and now it's in my studio, and that's totally excellent. And my initial thought was, well, this is great. I'll have drums on hand. So if someone wants to come over and play them, I'll have drums, and that'll be great. But of course, the moment they were set up, delusions of grandeur began to come into the picture. And so for the last month, I've been trying to learn how to play the drums, which is ridiculous. But I've discovered a couple of important things. One is it's a lot of the same sort of thought process and combination of thinking and not thinking that goes into playing fingerstyle guitar. Like if you're going to keep something going constantly, like a ride cymbal, and then do something against it, like a snare drum, that's really no different than trying to keep like a steady bass going and then trying to do other things with your fingers. Because you've got this, it's constants and variables. You've got like something you're trying to keep steady and something that you're trying to, if not improvise against, at least work out these sort of syncopated patterns against. So that's been very interesting and of course, profoundly humbling. And the other thing is drummers practice rudiments. They have these, specific rhythmic patterns that they need to be able to execute with both hands. And every drummer learns them, and it provides this sort of underpinning of sort of rhythmic facility. And that you then use everything that, a lot of things you would do subsequently have to do with these rudiments that you've worked out. So it got me thinking a lot about how there are certain rhythmic things you need to be able to execute to play fingerstyle guitar. And in this case, the constant is the steady bass, and the rhythmic variations are what you're doing with the fingers against the thumb. So in this lesson, I just want to show you one rhythmic idea and how you can then use that to create different kinds of blues licks on your own. So here's what it looks like. We're going to work with a steady bass in E. That's going to be the constant thing that we're playing. So just playing quarter notes on the low E string. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Now against that, we're going to start by just playing notes on the high string, and we're going to start by just playing eighth notes against those quarter notes. I'm going to use my ring finger for all the things that I play in this lesson. I'm going to assign a default of index finger to the third string, middle finger to the second string, ring finger to the high string, and then if I need to go down lower, the whole thing will come down, and I'll start with index finger on the fourth string. So if you're just going to play eighth notes against that quarter note bass, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So you're pinching on all the strong beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in between you're going to play an eighth note on its own, and that's going to be played with a swing eighths feel. So that second eighth note of the pair is going to be a little delayed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So first thing to do is just play those 4 quarter notes and make sure you can groove like that. Then add in these eighth notes. Now to make the rhythmic pattern that we're going to use for these licks, all we're going to do is leave out the first eighth note on the downbeat on 1. And we're going to come in with eighth notes on the and of 1, which can be a little trickier than it sounds. It'll be like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So once you can do that, you can then take the blues scale and you can kind of pour it into that rhythm and see what happens. So if we start with this scale of root, flat third, fourth, flat fifth, fifth, flat 7, and root. And then we could go up to the flat third and the fourth, maybe if we wanted to. Something really simple, just coming down the scale. You all know what happens when you just go to play the blues scale. It doesn't really sound like licks, it sounds like a scale. But if we take that same scale and we put it into this specific kind of rhythmic container, we get this. And now it starts starts to kind of sound like music. So I'm taking the scale and starting on the and of 1. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and then leaving a measure in between. And from there, I could go in a different direction. I could start down here. And so now I'm playing root, flat third, root, fourth, root, flat 5, 5. These are not super imaginative things that I'm doing, but you can see how just applying that rhythmic idea to those notes makes all the difference from sounding like you're playing scales to sounding like you're playing licks. And you could turn that around, and instead of landing on the 5th, you could land back on the root, which would create a little kind of call and response. And then repeat the first lick, and then maybe come back. Right? So there you have like a little 8-bar statement with these little call and response moments. It's enough to start creating something from scratch, just using this one specific rhythm. So now there are obviously a lot of ways you could carve up those 8 notes, and different ways you could syncopate it, all different kinds of rhythmic patterns you can make just out of one bar. So if you can do all of this with just that one pattern, imagine what you could do with just expanding just to maybe even 3 or 4 different kinds of rhythms that work within one bar of music. So it really opens up all kinds of possibilities. And if you've been trying to figure out how to make that transition from knowing what the scale is and knowing what the steady bass is to start creating your own licks and your own vocabulary, this can be a big piece of the puzzle. So just to recap, you want to start off with the steady bass, playing in quarter notes throughout the measure, and then play 8th notes against that steady bass. And then leave out the first 8th note of each measure. And finally, take the blues scale and pour those notes into that rhythmic container in as many different ways as you can come up with. And that's the idea. Now, if you're a fingerstyle guitar player and would like to learn more about the fundamentals of improvisation in more detail, I'll be doing an in-depth online workshop on October 15th. That's a Saturday morning. And I'll have more information about that and how to sign up in next week's lesson. In the meantime, if you've got a question or a comment about today's lesson, please leave it down below. I would love to hear from you. And as ever, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.